If you
Oh, there
okay,
you
Oh,
go.
there we go. No.
I just started recording, but you
Oh,
can probably start it yourself as well.
How did he do that?
I have no idea. Anyway, you're the scribe.
All right.
You are scribing.
You're gonna have to send him the recorded
All right.
video at some point.
Yeah, just send it
Oops.
to
All right,
the
first
email.
question. It's pretty straightforward, pretty
So wait,
simple.
how does this work? Like,
Just
do I
pour as much as you want onto any of the wings. I will match whatever you do. And Matt, your
Did you
honor
shape
system.
What are
this?
these?
I did. Yeah. Oh, those are yours.
What are they though?
Buffalo, Parmesan, and pineapple one. And then,
Oh,
okay,
are these
so,
the two?
babe, you're gonna audit
I'm sorry.
quietly.
Okay.
All right. Matt and Subu. Starting with Matt. Why did you choose your engineering major? I thought I thought it had like a little circle.
You did
It was just open bottle. I'm gonna die from the beginning. Okay. All right, Matt, go ahead.
Yeah, I did that with the hottest one, so that should be good. The board is totally soaked.
Oh no.
I've always liked kind of very hands-on things. So my dad's a mechanic. It kind of seemed like an extension of like how I sort of grew up learning about the world. Um, it's kind of funny. I don't really remember like consciously making the decision. It just kind of like was always the thing I was gonna do. Like once I was thinking about college, so um, never really thought about anything else.
I was kind of curious if it was a chicken or the egg scenario, right? Because your dad was so mechanically inclined and got you, interested in that. And was that the catalyst, or was it really just like you were gonna be on that path probably anyway, you know?
Yeah, you never know, nature or nurture, I guess.
Mhm.
But I feel like in my spare time, I tend to do like sort of mechanically things. Sort of like project sort of stuff is what makes me like happy. So I think I would have gotten there one way or the other.
Nice. But you, Soups.
I actually started my engineering trying to be an aerospace engineer.
Really?
Yeah. Um, and after 1 year of basic engineering courses
Mhm.
on my path to aerospace engineer, I discovered there's a book called The C Programming Language by Dennis Ritchie and Brian Kernighan, and I wrote my first piece of C code, um, and loved it so much I switched my major and changed everything.
That's crazy. One, being that self motivated while keeping up with all your schoolwork.
Yeah.
Because right now, I cannot imagine doing one more thing than I have to do right now. So you just picked it up. Where did you find this book? You're like, this looks interesting. Let me go ahead and read it.
Yeah, I mean, it was
Back.
one of the recommended readings for school. Like they
Mm.
were doing Java in school, so this was like reading books, and I just happened to find it in the school library.
That makes sense because it's kind of like what you think is supposed to be cool, and then you find what you personally actually think is cool, right?
Initially, I was dead against computer engineering. My
Just-
dad wanted to nudge me in that direction, and
Is that why
I
you're dead
said-
against it?
no, I a little bit. I think it was like a straight rebel situation, and I thought it was.
Were you a rebel as a kid?
Oh yeah, a little bit.
I can see it. I can see it. I'm gonna have to see some blasphemous past pics of you. All right. No, that first one was actually really pleasant. It was
very
like
fun.
just zing. It wasn't
Thank
anything
you.
special. I would have that with breakfast any day. I'm gonna be more careful with the next one. Although I am gonna like
Oh, thank you.
cover it.
Just in case you guys.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, baby.
Sure.
Oh no! It's like when you say don't do something. Now all I can think about is touching my eyebrows. All right, so Matt, how often do you interact with question 2 for the next wing sauce? How often do you interact with engineers from your major, other engineering majors, and non-engineering majors? Actually, this is a great segue that I was going to kind of have on one of our personalized questions, which is how would you say that was the case in Honda, Tesla, and your current LifeStraw position?
Yeah, actually, that was going to be how I approach this, because it's been different at each place. Certainly, a lot of other mechanical engineers pretty much anybody who's your colleague. You're doing the same job. Usually you come from the same background or similar. But anytime, engineering is generally in some sort of business setting. So unless you're working in like a research lab or something, you're usually having to think about sales or marketing or dealing with suppliers and all kinds of other things. So probably every day you end up working with somebody who's, has the same background as you, as well as maybe another engineer for electrical engineering or something. And then almost always somebody who's not an engineer. From Honda to Tesla, there was a big jump in like other types of engineers and non-engineers. And now at LifeStraw, almost everybody I work with is a non-engineer, which has its own challenges. Certainly, like communication is different and priorities are different for people. So things that like you could say to an engineer, like, "Oh, we failed the validation test or something," and the engineer would be like, "Oh, like this is awful news. Like we're gonna have to figure out the problem, spend some money. It's gonna hurt the schedule." Whereas somebody in marketing's like, "Fix it." Like, what? Like, I don't. Okay. So like understanding like people's different levels of understanding are interesting and definitely a challenge.
I can imagine that would be extraordinarily frustrating.
It can be.
And I imagine, Sue, you face similar. Well, Amazon is being more of a software development company, right? Do you have the same
Yeah.
issues with lack of technical know-how and the levels
Already
above you?
there.
So Amazon is mostly an engineering company. So I like in my previous job, I used to interact with a lot more non-engineers because we used to most of the customers that I did consulting, cybersecurity consulting for were government, fintech, or financial institutions, and they don't really hire engineers. At least they don't hire a lot of them. Like, and if they do hire them, like they don't necessarily end up in management. Amazon is a little bit different. Almost all the managers in Amazon were engineers. Most of the VPs and senior VPs like wrote parts of AWS. Like they were the programmers at some point that wrote parts of the company's code. And then sort of just grew up into management.
That's pretty cool. And they stuck around because I hear a lot about Amazon turnover. So I just assumed everyone was just gone.
So it does have a higher turnover, but has 1.5 million people. So it happens at like different layers, but most of the leadership sticks around.
Yeah.
So I experienced some of the challenges Matt describes, but most of the people I'll interact with are software engineers. Because I'm in cybersecurity, a lot of people that end up being good cybersecurity folks actually don't get a college degree. They have a problem with authority from like way up, and sort of just like leaned into this field.
Yeah.
And so large portion of my organization, they don't actually have an advanced degree.
Do you feel like that was the case in the past, but now even to get your foot in the door, even if you were a capable self-taught engineer, is that much more difficult, slimmer chance?
I mean, in cybersecurity and a lot of tech, not really. Like it's fine. Like most folks don't really look for the degree. Like they're not looking for a legacy or pedigree. Like they're looking for what you've done and what you're capable of, which is, I think it's normalized. The problem that the folks that did not have a degree experience is it's not the concept of what you learned in school. You learn that stuff anywhere. There's a discipline that comes with having your degree. Like you struggle for like 4 years. You struggle for 5 years. You have to balance life and study and project work. It teaches you how to organize your life. And believe it or not, like work is a lot like going to school. You have deadlines, you have to deliver by deadlines, you have to manage competing priorities. Folks that don't do it struggle with that, and not the technical work.
Right.
But the technical work, and like it's teachable. Like it takes a lot of time to learn all of these other things, and that's where I think the mindset, like the people that I interact with, that's where they have trouble. Like they'll understand the technical term or something like that, but they'll have trouble organizing their work. Or what happened?
So no, I think we're so good.
Yeah. And the other thing that I think I learned in engineering that I think if you didn't get a formal education that you won't learn is problem solving. Like when you're an engineer, you encounter a problem, you solve that problem. Like it's just the core practice. But that doesn't like people struggle with that. They kind of want a problem to be broken down into its component parts, and then they will solve that problem. But the breaking down is something that they're not taught to do.
Hmm. It's interesting. It's very dangerous to segue into because like you guys bring up some really interesting points, and it's so easy to segue out into them. But we're gonna keep with the format. We're gonna push at the end. We can circle. We're
Okay.
gonna circle. Okay. So for next sauce, let's see. How important is the company's size, reputation, in the growth of your engineering roles? Let's just say, how important is the company in terms of size and reputation, in your opinion?
Like where you work, like how does that affect your career? Or
It's poorly phrased, so I'm gonna go with like whatever you feel like has the most interesting, um, facts about it,
gotcha.
right?
Yeah, I think there are different challenges in different places, like having worked in large and kind of like medium and now a small company. The problems you're solving are different, and sometimes
That's about it.
the challenges you face along the way are different and not always like completely technical. Like right now, in my current company, we're working on upgrading our CAD system and our data management system, and like essentially having to spec out all our IT stuff
I see it
and
all.
do a lot of things that would otherwise not be anywhere near responsible for. So it's cool to have a say in some of that, but then also like sometimes it's a lot of extra work. Um, so you learn different things. There are different challenges. I think there are, pluses and minuses to both, and you just have to kind of pick what's right for you at that point in your career. I think, in my opinion, I think it's good to start someplace that's fairly established so that you can kind of, what Subu was saying, like you can learn a process to how do you solve problems? How do you deal with something that completely doesn't work? And like, instead of like being stressed about it or being like super thrown by it, it's helpful to see how like experienced people or experienced companies approach things. And like, there's always going to be stuff that you don't agree with or like red tape or bureaucracy, but at least like someone's thought about it and been through it a bunch of times. And then, you know, you can always change that later, but it's usually a good place to learn from.
I said I wasn't gonna do it, but I'm gonna segue slightly because you brought up a good point. Like, big company with a lot of people, hopefully with experience, they can share their knowledge with you. How important was having like some kind of mentor at your first company?
It's huge, I think.
Yeah, it's a big deal. Because I think you learn a bunch from like more than like your formal mentoring sessions where you sort of bring like, okay, here's something that I'm struggling with, I need help with. I think like finding a role model, which I think is also a mentor, especially if you're in a smaller company, you're gonna run into your mentor a lot because there are not that many people there. And seeing how they navigate a situation, how are they starting meetings, how are they dealing with disagreement, right? Like how are they building consensus, and when they are unable to build consensus, what are they trying to do? I think that observational aspect was very important, at least in the earlier part of my mentor mentee relationship. So I actually got more out of having a mentor, not in the 1 hour per every other week when we would sync, but it was in all the other times. So
Just soaking it in.
just like observing, right? Like, oh, okay. And then you pick up these like tips and tricks and then try and like make it your own in how you are navigating like a similar kind of a situation. But I couldn't like I agree a lot with Matt, right? Like I did not start in a big company. I started in a very small company, and although I learned a bunch of stuff, I think like my learning journey would have been the trajectory would have been a lot steeper
Mhm.
if I started in a much larger company. And because in the smaller companies, you just don't have that much like even the people around you don't have that much like the experience. They haven't dealt with a lot of problems. They're not working at the scale
Mhm.
that a much larger company is working at. But you gotta find the right large company, right? Like, if I found a big bank or IBM, like you won't learn anything.
Right.
You find the right big large company, you'll learn a bunch.
It's the tricky part, especially with how difficult the job market seems to be these last couple of years. So much to go into at the end point here. All right, so we can also skip some. They seem boring. No, this is good. This is good though. So Matt, how would you describe your daily activity and general calendar of events between three companies you've been to? And is there a preference? Is there a preference? Also, is there one that you were like, I didn't prefer it, but it led to more personal growth?
Um, yeah, so awesome. Lots of meetings generally at all three. Hey, settle down. Probably more than I would prefer. Oh. Meetings are tricky because you're not getting work done during meetings. You are sort of usually adding work. So definitely a heavy meeting cadence is pretty typical. I found Honda was pretty much entirely in-person meetings, and the style of meeting would be like Subu mentioned, the Japanese style of like building consensus so that you're going into a meeting to basically like record a result. There's very rarely like a strong discussion or disagreement in like a meeting at Honda. Tesla was way more like ad hoc, like just people would be sometimes yelling at each other or like it would get pretty intense sometimes. And a lot more remote. We didn't have a lot of meeting space, so Honda was very in person. Tesla was very much like Zoom call. And my current role, I work with a very distributed team worldwide. So meetings at not great times and lots of virtual meetings, good amount of travel. So that's also not my preference. I think I kind of prefer to have everything in person, especially working on hardware. It's nice to have everybody kind of in the same room, touching the same thing. It takes a lot of effort to, at least in my mechanical world, to kind of like build that context for people who are not there. Like when you need to like explain a problem and show a picture and show a video and like you do all this like work to like communicate something that's maybe like if you were here, we'd already have this context and we could talk about it instead of sharing the information first. So I find the remote thing kind of challenging, actually.
I can imagine your experience with remote is quite different being software, right?
It is and it isn't. I think a lot you can do more by being remote in software, but the same issues start to plague your discussions, right? Like you're trying to explain something, and even with really good collaboration tools, like sometimes it's just great to get a bunch of people standing up next to a whiteboard and